Hey, Coach, I'm so excited that you found us on YouTube. Let me know how we can help. The video is just a small snippet of all the things we have over at teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. It's everything. It is the resource for basketball coaches, one-on-one calls, office hours with me. I've coached at every level. I've coached NBA guys. Let me help you become a better basketball coach. Doesn't matter which level you're at. I am here to help. I'm here to serve. So go over and check it out. All right, let's head off to the video.
Okay, hi, this is Coach Sager here on Coach Unplugged. I have the luxury of interviewing a former player and author, Eric Price. Eric Price is the author of the book called Full Court Press, A Young Basketball Prodigy's Journey. Eric grew up playing basketball against stars like Steph Curry and AAU teammates of many NBA players. At age 10 years old, Eric was rated #1 player in the world. But the game didn't work out for him. His book explains his journey, and every coach and basketball fan should read it. So I'd like to welcome Eric today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot, man.
So Eric, can you kind of give the listeners a little bit about your basketball journey?
Yeah, so my basketball journey began really, really early when I was about the age of 5 years old. I discovered that, basketball was kind of my passion. That was the thing that kind of really allowed me to be a kid and enjoy it. When I got about 8 years old, a lot of people realized that I was becoming really, really good. People like my peers, but not only peers, adults as well. So me being at that age, I didn't really know how good I was. I just knew that I loved the game of basketball. So I played my first boys club game at about 9 years old. I played on the 10 and under team. In my first game, I scored 26 points. So from then on, I knew that basketball would be something that would be a part of my life. After that, I became really, really good at about 10 years old. Like you said and mentioned, I was ranked the #1 player in the world by the basketball media. So I was really focused on basketball then at that age. That was my #1 thing every day. Besides academics, it was always academics and basketball. So I grew up and I went in the DC area. I grew up and I went to Gonzaga High School, which is one of the most prestigious high schools in the nation. I ended up transferring to Montrose Christian High School, which is even a more prestigious basketball program, who was directed under the legendary coach Stu Vetter. Um, and then from there, things kind of got rocky as far as after my high school career. I was getting recruited by a lot of colleges and things of that sort. But being from the neighborhood that I grew up in, and a number of other, factors, it kind of took a toll right then and there.
Okay, so why did you decide to write your book? Obviously, everybody has a mission in regards to when they write a memoir because it really is your story. I think any basketball fan like myself or coaches and all the other things and insights that you give us around the AAU circuit, around the game of high school basketball and all the things that you can learn from this book. I'm surprised that more people, this book hasn't hit the market and people aren't talking about it on ESPN because there's so many facets and things that are just the information and the plethora of information given of all the things that can happen
Mm-hmm.
as a young star is just something that is a great insight for people. So ultimately, why did you decide to write the book?
That's a great question. I decided to write my book because I wanted to share my story of resilience. I have a lot of friends that are, like you had mentioned, that are in the NBA, but I also have a lot of friends who I grew up with that, didn't go to the NBA or didn't, live luxurious lifestyles and things of that sort. So I wanted to tell my story of resilience because whether you're playing basketball, whether you're going to work every day, whether you're a farmer, no matter what you're doing in life, there's going to be a time in your life where you're going to face an unexpected challenge. And whether those challenges are deserved or not, I think resilience is the key to being able to maintain a healthy lifestyle. So I wanted to tell my story of resilience. That's the #1 reason that I wrote my book. The second reason is because there's a lady, I grew up in a rough neighborhood in DC called Sursum Quarter, and we partnered. Georgetown University was really close in proximity to the neighborhood, So we would Surson Quarter would partner up with Georgetown tutors, and they would come into the community and teach the kids how to read and write and things of that sort, and just work with them academically. And I met my mentor, Kristen White, when I was about 5 years old. She's the co-author actually of my book. She has a best-selling book of her own as well. So we teamed up and wrote the book together. But one thing that I want to say is that she actually taught me how to read. By the time I was 6 years old, I was reading on a second grade reading level and very proficiently. So I think it's kind of ironic that we came back full circle as adults and kind of put this piece together. I thought that was really unique as well. So those are, probably the main reasons why I wrote the book.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Basically, why do you think you were so successful at a young age as a basketball player?
Um, I think because I was not only was I talented, but I was hungry. I can remember being 10 years old, being one of the most hungriest players on the court. I always thought that no one could guard me between me and the basket, that no one person could guard me no matter who it was. So that was always my mentality. So that's probably it.
Ultimately learned some of the reasons, but what do you think ultimately was stopped your progress? Because you're getting all these big high prestige offers from schools like Memphis at the time, that John Calipari. I mean, originally you had a verbal commitment to go there. So what do you think ultimately stopped your progress in making your dreams in regard to the game of basketball?
Sure. There's a number of factors. And I think the number one factor, and I've never said this publicly, and I've had, numerous interviews and things of that sort, but AAU basketball can be a nightmare for some people, especially and this is another reason why I wrote the book, because there are a lot of skilled athletes that are going to go on to, get Division I scholarships, but they might be in a single parent household, like how I was when, my mom was just there. So you might have different coaches and things coming up to my mom as far as, recruiting and things of that sort, telling them things that that they know she wants to hear. So it's always about having someone on that level, each level of your life, that you can actually look up to. I was fortunate enough to have a good AU coach, and my coach, Rob Jackson. Um,
Yes.
he was a very very good man. So I kind of looked up to him, and a lot of people don't understand. When you're that age, when you're a teenager, you need a male role model to look up to. So if you have bad guys in your corner or bad guys on your AU team or circuit, then it's going to kind of suck you in. So I think, to answer your question, what made me, what put me as a halt was the battling of the coaches. And when I'm talking about coaches, I'm talking about the high school coaches versus the AU coach. For instance, my ninth grade year, I went to Gonzaga. I ended up going to 5 different high schools, and this is why. AU basketball, I felt, got me on the scene. It got me ranked the number one player in the world. So I always felt the commitment to AU to always play in the summertime. So I started playing AU at about 10 years old. But by the time I got 13, I was in high school. I had skipped a grade early in middle school, and I was a 13-year-old freshman. So that was really the change, where I was in high school, and my my coaches wanted me to play summer league basketball for my high school. So it was kind of a conflict between summer league and AU basketball. So at the end of every season, when summertime came around, I had to find a new school to go to, because my coaches basically gave me the ultimatum of, look, you're either going to play with your school for the summer and not play AU basketball, and you're gonna have to find another school to go to, because they, wanted to build off the camaraderie from, the season before and things of that sort. So it was a lot of juggling with that. Also, I didn't know this until I became an adult, but there was a feud between Coach Calipari at the time and my coach Joe Mantegna, who was at Blair Academy in New Jersey. The year before, Charlie Villanueva, I think, had went to Villanova, and Luol Deng had signed with Duke. And I think Calipari had either one of the two, or maybe both. So there was some type of feud going in with them. Going into Blair Academy my junior year, I had already committed to play for John Calipari at Memphis. I didn't really know until Mr. Mantegna pulled me into his office and basically talked me into decommitting from Memphis, who he was a head coach at the time. So it was just little things like that, little mix-ups, and word of mouth would get back that this kid isn't loyal, and people trying to name shame and things like that.
Right.
So that's another reason why I wrote the book, because one thing that I always did was I always took advantage of my education. So no matter what school system I was in, like a prestigious school like Gonzaga or Blair Academy or something like that, I was always a sponge. So I always soaked in information, and I always, was aware of my surroundings. So that's another thing that, really made me really good in basketball, and in life as well. So that was one thing that no one could, ever take away from me, was my education. So I just wanted to, I felt like I had something to prove. A lot of people thought I was they tried to bury me. They just didn't know I was a seed. So I just wanted to show people, what I could do.
Absolutely. And, the reason why I think that's a huge point in the book, especially for coaches and reading about your book. And, the one question I have is, why do you think those high school coaches were so against you playing AAU in the summer? Because I don't understand, from a coach, from my standpoint, I coached varsity basketball for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm an assistant and so forth. And it seems like it now and ever people have just kind of accepted. But in the book, it seemed like it was a constant battle of the AAU circuit and the high school circuit.
Yeah.
Was that just a time period when you were a high school player, or is that like that in the East Coast? Do you think the high school
That's a great question. I think it was maybe just a DMV, a DC thing. It happened when I was at Gonzaga. It even got even more severe when I was at Montrose Christian. It got so severe that my dream was always to play for Duke. So I wanted to go to Duke ever since, 8th grade. So a lot of coaches knew that as well. So a lot of coaches wouldn't, bother recruiting me at times. So I can remember at Montrose, when the summer had kicked in and after the season, and he had, Coach Vetter brought me into his office for the end of the season, and he was saying, how he wanted me to play with the school team and not play AU. So I told him I was going to play AU. And that day I'll never forget. I was 14 years old, and he told me that if you walk out of this office and you do not play summer league, you will never ever hear from Duke again. So I went on to that was the year where I left, and I had to go to Blair Academy because of that. And if you match the dates up, that's why I actually called Calipari and committed to Memphis, because I knew that he was serious about what he said, and I never actually heard from Duke ever again after that.
Yeah, I found that really, really mind blowing when I read about that.
Yeah, that was very true.
And so much interconnections with so many programs, and so ultimately, when I look into focus, is what can coaches learn from your book and your story? If you were in the eyes of a coach, what can coaches learn from your story to help out their team or their athletes from your story?
One thing I could definitely probably say, if to coaches especially, is be there for the kid, be genuine to the kid, because no matter where the kid ends up, if the kid ends up in the NBA, if the kid ends up with a high paying job, if the kid ends up with a low paying job, he's gonna need that guidance that you have those kids at a very important age. So it's really important to teach resilience, and also to just be honest and open, because not only are kids looking up to you as a coach, they're looking up to you as a role model. So I can remember, just vividly mimicking people that I wanted to grow up and be like. So, and it really made me successful in life, just practicing good habits. So just being the change that you wish to see is something I would tell the coaches. I'm a school teacher now, so I do that with my kids, and my kids really get along with me. I teach high school English and math, and a lot of my kids get along well with me, because they're able to relate to me. They know that I care about them, and things of that sort. So kids really can tell who's there for them in their best interest. So that's something that I would really preach to, especially AAU coaches.
So what about a high school coach and dealing with a high caliber player like yourself at that time? And obviously it hindered your career by transferring so many times in 5 high schools. What recommendation do you give to, say, a coach that's got a really high caliber player at a high school? What's the best way to deal with a player of that standpoint, do you think, in regards to your program?
Just let the kid play. If he's a high school coach and he's attending your high school, you know that you have the kids. So just let the kid play. Don't try to restrict the kid or lock a kid in, because that's how you mess with the kid's psyche. Kids want to be kids at the end of the day. All kids want to do well naturally. Some just don't know how to. So never pressure that kid to, or box that kid in thinking that um it's about them, because ultimately it's about that kid at the end of the day. So if the kid wants to be exposed and play basketball, I think that he should play basketball. A lot of high school coaches will argue to me that the kids need discipline and there's no discipline in AAU and things of that sort. Well, I mean, there's bad things everywhere. So at the end of the day, I think the best way to look at it is just to, kind of let a kid be a kid and just let him get as much exposure as possible.
Yeah, and so we constantly talk about the battle of AAU, not AAU. From your experience, are you a fan of AAU? Do you think if it fits everybody, or do you think it's for a certain mold of kid? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think AAU, especially when I was playing, going to Nike camp and all of those, seminars and things like that. I can remember those things helping me academically. So I'm not against AAU, but I am against bad people, and there are a lot of bad people in AAU. There are bad people in high school as well. So I'm not kind of against any level of competition of basketball, but I'm just against those bad people who are using up the kids and gaining things of that sort. If you feel that way about AU, you should feel that way about the NCAA. I mean, it's the same thing. Ultimately, they're not paying the kids. Kids are sacrificing their bodies and things of that sort. So it's kind of the same thing. You just need to be around good people.
I think that's a great point. I think, I think one of the whole overall themes that I get from your book, and why coaches really need to address even at all their players, is making sure they're hanging out with the right players. So,
Exactly.
and right people, and there's
Yeah.
bad people in the high school circuit. There's bad people in the AAU
Mhm.
circuit. And, you were part of that 2% or 3% of athletes that end up going to play at the high level, and AAU is obviously a great opportunity for them to be exposed, and but for your story, so what would be the number one advice you give for a young player that's kind of seeking to move on and move higher level in their game of basketball?
I know it sounds like a cliche, but I've been through the fire, man. Like I said, I've been the number one player in the world. So the, there's not really too much that speaking competitively, that someone can tell me. But what I can tell you for sure is to go to school and get your education, man. It is nothing more important than to know. And you don't go to school just to get an education. School is meant to give you structure. So I can remember growing up and just playing basketball and being so good. And when the basketball ended, I was able to rebound, because all of those things that were taught to me on the basketball court for and things of that sort that were taught to me by coach veteran legendary coaches of that sort, it correlates directly into the working world. So problems that you have on the court, whether you're down by 2 points and there's 3 seconds left and you don't even have the ball and you don't think that there's no hope, those things directly correlates with life. So it's going to transfer into a real life situation. So I'm so thankful that I was actually gifted with the talent to play basketball, because some of those things are directly correlates with life.
And that's why I love your book so much, is I think that, players and coaches need to understand that, we never hardly ever hear the Eric Price story. We hear the Steph Curry story. We hear the Kevin Durant story.
Exactly. Yep.
And the reality is there's a lot of people that go through your story and that people don't even know about,
Exactly.
or it's the players that we know, like the great Hogan story, because he was a number one draft pick and it flopped for him, but you kind of, you're before that time. But there's a lot of people that have been in your position with not maybe by the right people and those type of things, but you had your education, and people can learn from your story, and coaches can explain that story to their players. And that's why I felt like I needed to read your book and do this podcast interview. And I just loved your book, and it was a great experience. And I'm also a teacher myself, so I'm glad that you're educating people, and that's awesome. And yeah. So, at this point, that's basically all I have for Coach Unplugged in your interview. Do you have any other words to say, or are you pretty good?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for the opportunity. I hope a lot of people tune in and get this book. It's a really great book. It's a true story. It's an all out raw story. There's nothing left out. It's really uncut. And I did it for the people, not only for athletes, but parents of athletes, coaches, and things of that sort. People who really need to see the ins and out of high stakes AU basketball. So once again, I just want to thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you, Eric.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Coach. Hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know how we can help. Teachhoops.com, if you click up above and down below, is the one-stop shopping for basketball coaches. It's not only community, it's not only resources, it's not only mentoring from me, it's a little bit of everything. I've been there. I've won lots of championships and lots of rings. I can help you become a better basketball coach. Let me know how I can do that. Enjoy the day.